Hello, and welcome to the Geopolitics Explained podcast. This is the podcast that breaks down complex events in geopolitics into short, Creator of Geopolitics Explained, and this has been recorded on the 6th of March 2024. Now, as I glance over at my schedule, around a month ago, I planned to do an episode on the potential Donald Trump disqualifications from running on the ballot in the states of Colorado and Maine. I decided to hold off on that for the time, hoping that further developments would come out on the topic. That has now occurred in the last few days with the United States Supreme Court ruling that the state of Colorado will not be allowed to ban Donald Trump from running on the ballot. I decided that now was a good time to dive deeper into this issue and how it even arose in the first place. Back in December, the Colorado Supreme Court considered Trump ineligible to run for the presidency and that his name would be excluded from the ballot in Colorado. Around a week later, the state of Maine also joined Colorado. In response, many other states openly stated that Trump would remain on their ballot if he was to win the Republican presidential candidacy. States such as California and Michigan, for example. So, what's the reason that the states of Colorado and Maine wanted to ban Trump from the ballot? Well, from the Capitol attack in January of 2021, these two states believe that Trump engaged in insurrection. This would be in violation of a specific section of the 14th Amendment, Section 3, which I will read to you now. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each House, remove such disability. So to break that babble down into a digestible, understandable chunk, basically, anybody who has held office or been in a leadership position mentioned in the amendment, if they then act in rebellion against that same state, they can no longer run for office. This amendment was first adopted in 1868 and in 1872 was removed for most, but the most senior Confederates who took part in the American Civil War. This was because in 1872 the Amnesty Act was passed. Over this entire period, Section 3 has been invoked once, when a member of the Socialist Party of America was convicted of violating the Espionage Act because he opposed the US entering World War I. This conviction was overturned by the Supreme Court. Now, this could lead you to ask, why has a policy from the Civil War age been brought back today? Well, it was our good friend Nancy Pelosi, who at the time was the Speaker of the House, who requested input as to whether Section 3 of the 14th Amendment should lead to disqualification of Donald Trump due to his role in the Capitol attack. Interestingly, this was after Trump didn't win the 2020 election. He was the outgoing president, which is a point I'll return to later on. On Monday of this past week, the 4th of March 2024, the US Supreme Court unanimously voted that Donald Trump must be placed on Colorado's 2024 ballot. A day later, we saw the Maine Secretary of State reversing their own decision, trying to bar Trump from their ballot. Now, a few takeaways from this entire situation. Firstly, in the 2020 presidential election, Trump lost Colorado, and he only won one of the 4 electoral college votes from Maine. This brings into question if it would have really mattered if Trump wasn't allowed on the ballot in either Colorado or Maine. Is it likely that they were states he was going to win anyway? Another reason in support of Trump being allowed to run on the ballots in Colorado and Maine is the question of whether Section 3 of the 14th Amendment even applies to the president. The amendment specifically states that no person who is an elector of the president or vice president, not the president or vice president themselves. This is one argument that is portrayed in support of Trump. Supporters of Trump also say that he is enacting his right to free speech, and that this is a decision that should be made by the voters, not judges. Trump should be included on the ballots everywhere, and the voters will decide that come November. Now, those are reasons that support Trump. There are quite a few that go against him. A similar event has occurred in another country with Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil. Now, it is deemed that Bolsonaro, when he lost the Brazilian election to Lula in 2022, that he incited the coup attempts that saw many supporters of Bolsonaro attack federal buildings in Brazil. As a result of this, Bolsonaro has been banned from running for office until 2030. Now, this is a similar sounding situation to the one that Trump has found himself in, but Trump has suffered no consequences. Some might say, is this a failure of democracy? Is Brazil more democratic than the United States currently? It's clear that there is some serious internal political tension inside the United States, and I think this is a very clear comparison between two very similar situations and how they've both unfolded in different ways. Another reason that some will propose goes against Trump is that in the history of the United States, there's been 4 impeachment attempts. 2 of those have been for Donald Trump. The first was when Trump tasked Ukrainian President Zelensky with investigating Biden and Hunter Biden, hoping to gain an advantage in the 2020 election. This was voted guilty by 48 members of the Senate and not guilty by 52. A vote of 2/3, which aligns with 67 members of the Senate, need to vote guilty for a president to be impeached. So Trump wasn't impeached for this first attempt. The second attempt came from the insurrection of the Capitol building, in which 57 voted guilty and 43 voted not guilty. Again, not hitting the number of 67 votes needed in the Senate for an impeachment. Regardless of all these issues that are seemingly stacked up against Donald Trump, on Tuesday the 5th of March, we saw Super Tuesday, where many states in the US head to the votes to vote for who they wish to be the presidential candidate. And it seems Donald Trump is leading massively over the other potential Republican candidate, Nikki Haley. Now, from all of this, of which there is a lot, if one thing is clear, I think it's that the Republican Party is now Donald Trump's party. And we're certainly in for an exciting and tense election year. This has been the Geopolitics Explained podcast. I want to thank you all for listening. If this is your first time here and you feel so obliged, I'd love it if you could leave a review on the podcast platform of your choice. If you want more like this, I also write over on Substack at Geopolitics Explained. You can find that link in the description. I'm also currently compiling a 2024 election tracker, which is going to look in depth at all the elections occurring around the world this year, of which there are quite a lot. There's already deep dives over there, specifically into the Taiwanese election, which we saw in January, and others such as the Pakistani election, and I'm soon to add a discussion on the Indonesian election. If any of this takes your fancy, again, head to the links in the description, or you can find me at Geopolitics Explained on Substack. I've been Dylan. Until next time, signing off.